This is last.
Good morning and welcome, and thank you all for coming. You're honored to be the last group of 11 groups that we've had from the outset, and we've had over 250 people attend these meetings, so we feel that was a nice success in terms of the numbers. So we're going to proceed. My name is Will Rogers. I'm from Bloomfield, and I tell people I'm part of the reason why you're all here as a result of a petition that we circulated early on in the year.
I'm Jamshed Bathena. I'm also from Bloomfield, and I'm Will's partner in this endeavor.
You all know me.
Yep.
I'm your general manager, Kyle Kinney.
The format we'll be following is, at the end of this educational leadership, you'll see a printout of this board, because this board is difficult to read. We'll be following that format. There's the pros and cons of private and public restaurant.
So what we'll do is we'll go through the pros of an independent proprietor. I'll respond with the cons to an independent proprietor. And then I'll make a presentation on the pros of having the restaurant be privately managed, and Jamshed will go through the cons on that based upon the information that you have. And then from there, we'll open it up to questions to the floor.
So if you turn to the sheet that says public restaurant managed by independent proprietor, that's the very first sheet.
You've got it already. It's the first sheet of that packet.
A public restaurant managed by independent proprietor. Proprietor bears all expenses. The independent proprietor will bear all costs and expenses for the operation of the restaurant, eliminate financial burden on the club. Proprietor owns profits and losses. All restaurant profits or losses will be borne by the independent proprietor and will not be shared by the club. No member minimum required. With a public restaurant, members will not be required to pay an annual food minimum, eliminating an additional cost to the members. They'll pay menu prices at each visit. No member assessment for losses. With the restaurant operated for profit by an independent proprietor, members will not incur any increase in their annual assessment to subsidize the restaurant losses. Proprietor hire and fire responsibility. Proprietor is responsible for hiring all restaurant staff personnel, staff training, and dealing with any disciplinary issues, including discharge if necessary. Proprietor incurs all employee expenses. The independent proprietor will be responsible for the cost to administer employees' payroll, benefits, training, and uniforms. The club will not bear any administration costs for this function. Proprietor owns liquor permits and liability. The proprietor will be required to obtain all liquor licenses and permits in his name. All liabilities that arise from liquor abuse will be the responsibility of the proprietor, who will hold the club harmless. Proprietor responsible for entertainment. All costs associated with finding and providing entertainment and the advertising of these events will be at the expense of the independent proprietor. Proprietor pays liability insurance for the leased premises. The proprietor will carry the required casualty and liability insurance to cover the leased restaurant facilities as terms of the lease. Proprietor owns problems with maintaining chefs. The responsibility of maintaining chefs and kitchen staff is the responsibility of the proprietor, given chefs and culinary staff are a high turnover profession, unless of course the proprietor is the chef. Club gains rental income. The club will have a revenue stream from the rent payment for the lease of the restaurant premises. With the facilities being entirely new, they should provide the potential for a good lease price. Proprietor responsible for food standards. The proprietor will be responsible for ensuring safe food handling practices, safe cooking practices, kitchen hygiene, and ensuring the presence of certified staff in the operation of the kitchen. He will also be responsible for food quality. Club has minimal operating expenses. Under the operation of an independent proprietor, the club may share in some of the costs of certain utilities, services, equipment, and the maintenance and repairs of the leased premises. These costs would be considerably less if the restaurant were run privately. Member priority reservation system. The independent operator will implement a priority reservation system for members under the terms of the lease. The members will be able to make reservations multiple days prior to the restaurant accepting reservations from the public. There will be an exclusivity clause in the lease for member events. No social fee for renters. Under a public restaurant operation, there will be no need for a social fee of $50 per month for renters to utilize the restaurant. This would eliminate any administrative costs to administering the system. It will also be an incentive for renters. Limited demands on GM. Running a restaurant is a full-time job. The independent proprietor will own all of the management responsibilities for the operation of the restaurant. This will allow the general manager to concentrate his efforts on all other club functions. Okay.
Thank you, Jamshed. It sounds absolutely wonderful. I mean, it just sounds like we found the end of the rainbow in that proposal. There's no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is that you all contributed $5,000 to upgrade all the facilities at your club. And we're going to go ahead and turn the keys over to somebody that we have no idea who they are, who's going to sit there and promise you're going to be able to deliver that scenario. I mean, that's a roll of the dice. See if that happens. But the biggest thing is the only way there can be survival is massive amounts of public coming into the club. That's the only way. A proprietor in this marketplace has 5 months to gather the acorns. 5 months. That's it. You know how seasonal this town is. Okay? And they've got to gather enough income to carry them for the next 7 months until the season comes around. That's probably one of the most difficult aspects that an operator has in town. You're going to give up exclusive use by members. So now you're going to come into the grill room on a Friday night looking for a table for 2 or 4, and they're going to tell you that, I'm sorry, it'll be a 45-minute wait. They don't know your name, okay? They don't even know you're a member, okay? They just know that you're somebody that you want to come into the restaurant and eat. You go up to your club because you want to interact with your fellow members, your fellow neighbors, and people that you've known for 20 years. If that's not important to you, then hit Carrabba's or do something like that, okay? But that's what a club nurtures, exclusive use by its members. Now, with that being said, we would have private limited public access for special events. If we need to fill up New Year's Eve, we need to open up reservations for Easter brunch, Christmas brunch, we could do Valentine's Day. The board has said that that would be at the direction of the club or myself to say what makes sense for us to fill those seats if we don't have that volume. So that still is there. And then the biggest aspect is getting in business in the summer. Royalwood has never gone after golf outings in the summer, and I can't figure that out because when you take a look at a great, good charity function out there, and you all know how many charity functions there are in the summertime, those charity functions with a 120-person shotgun start with a lunch and/or beverages, not to mention they buy all their prizes from the host club, that's a good $10,000 day for the club. It's a great $10,000 day for the club. And we'll be going after that marketplace, okay? that would be something that is well worth it for us to invest in. So we would certainly do that. So not only is there exclusive use by the members, there's going to be scheduling conflicts for activities. Okay? There's going to be scheduling conflicts as it relates to having a proprietor come in. Obviously, there's going to be less member interactions. No member influence on menus, pricing, beverage or otherwise. I had some people yesterday's town hall meeting said, Kyle, if you could give me a happy hour like the Julio's does, I'll be in there every single day. And I said, well, guess what? That's our decision to do that. Okay? That's our decision to do that. So you all know what happened last year with the happy hour. Okay? And what an issue that became. And that's where that was. But when we own it and we control it, or I should say when you own it, okay, and I control it on your behalf, okay, these are decisions that we get to make. What works best for Royalwood? So that's big, okay? That's really big. I remember telling a vendor not too long ago, Royalwood is not coming in for $24.95 dinners. They're not. They want to come in often, but the Royalwood group is not looking for $24.95 a head dinners. It's just not their Wednesday night routine, okay, whatsoever. Member input, no member input for entertainment. I must have received 50 cards from members that gave them to me saying, oh my God, I was here and I heard this person. Oh my gosh, I was here, I heard this person. Or we're out to dinner over here. Kyle, you got to call this person and we got to go ahead and book them. Because when there was entertainment, even with vendors, you paid for it. Because they wouldn't. They wouldn't pay for entertainment. That was money right out of their pocket. They didn't value entertainment. So thus, the only way that we had entertainment was as if I agreed out of the social budget to pay for entertainment. Proprietor managed dress code. You all know how to come up to a club. Somebody better be at that door, okay? Because if he's got to pack that space, it's going to be a full-time job managing that dress code, okay? In what is going to be a beautiful, beautiful new clubhouse. It's going to be gorgeous. There's no doubt about it. And I've got to assume that if his business model is I've got to fill it with the public, okay, then there's going to be possible parking problems. The only reason there wouldn't be parking problems is because you don't go up to your club. Because you're going up to your club, you don't like the prices, you don't necessarily like the menu, and you're surrounded by people you don't know. And then thus, you stop going to your club, which you just paid, okay, on a beautiful enhancement. And that's just a few of the cons of a proprietor. Thank you, Jamshed.
Thank you, Kyle. You want to go through?
Sure. So, I'd like to go through the pros of a private establishment run by the club. Obviously, myself as your general manager, but first I want to, for those of you who don't know my professional background, we'll be on this sheet right here. I just want to briefly kind of go through it with you. I have a bachelor's degree in hotel restaurant administration from FIU in Miami. I spent 10 years in food and beverage operations in management at the Ritz-Carlton Naples. I was there before and when the hotel went 5-star, 5 diamond. It was young in my career, and it was just an unbelievable day that I'll never forget when that was announced by Mr. Joe Frady, the general manager, where he called in all the management into the ballroom and then announced that we had just went 5-star, 5 diamond. We celebrated, and the sales guys went up and told everybody that hotel rates were going up. We got 5-star, 5 diamond, and that's exactly what they did. I opened up the Ritz-Carlton Palm Beach, and then I went back to work for Ritz-Carlton in the Ritz-Carlton Club division, and I took an international assignment in Abaco, Bahamas for 3 years. And I thought it was, I convinced my wife it was a Caribbean vacation. It was no vacation. I also was at the Loxahatchee Club in Jupiter, Florida as its clubhouse manager. Very, very fine, exclusive club. And then I've been a general manager for 20 plus years mainly in Collier County. I know this market very, very well, and I spent roughly 8 years as the President and Chief Operating Officer at the Pelican Bay Foundation with the two beachfront restaurants. We did $3 million annually in food and beverage sales, and that was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That was a la carte. There was no banquet. Okay, $3 million a year. In the month of February, we were doing $20,000 a day in food and beverage. So if we got a 5-day cold front, it hurt badly. We have three, at that time we had 3,000 chaise lounges on the beach between both operations. It was a big operation. So, and before I get started, if you turn the page, I want to read to you private clubs and cost in food and beverage. Though privately managed and operated club dining operations cost money, members are supporting an important amenity for the benefit of all members. A club's reputation is an important basis for members to consider outside its walls. Potential buyers understand a club's reputation, whether it's the golf course, food and beverage operations, fitness center, etc. The Royalwood model will be a cost-efficient operation that recognizes member desire for great food and reasonable pricing. Most clubs go overboard in its schedule of events during season and compete with themselves, costing money to the members. Heavy staffing is often very common, but it's not necessary to ensure great service. This club would operate in a fiscal conservative manner to keep the subsidy reasonable. So let's talk about some of the pros. They're kind of opposite of some of the pros of a proprietor, but we're talking about exclusive use by the members. That's a beautiful thing, other than going ahead and having that limited public access as we see fit. Majority of that would be obviously all in the summer. Creates the member interaction. That's what you desire in a country club community, member interaction.
Time is going to this, some of you have difficulty.
Thank you, sir. Obviously, there's no scheduling issue for activities. For all of you that are active, whether it be in cards or golf or whatever it might be, you know how many functions that we're having during the day, in the evening. We can still continue with our traditions of having trivia, having bingo, and all those other events. We control that. We set the pricing on that. And obviously, there's no scheduling activities because we make the calendar up, okay? Member influence, menus, and pricing. That's critical. That's absolutely critical, okay? The board sets, I go ahead and put together a budget, and I set a budget of 42% food cost, 25% liquor cost. My beer cost should be around 19%. Obviously, these are standard in the industry for clubs. And then I take a look at that and say, okay, what's the best pricing that I can get? Okay, if the board says, oh, I'd like pricing to be better, then what I do is I say, okay, well, I can do that, but I need to have a budgeted food cost of 45%, for example, okay? Most proprietors out on the open marketplace, they're looking to have a food cost somewhere around the 24, 25% range, tops, okay? And the lower the food cost, the higher the menu price. That's how that whole program works, okay? So, club responsible for food standards. Beautiful. You know why? Because if the food standards aren't there, you know who you get to come see? Me, okay? Because that's my responsibility for our staff to deliver very, very good, fine quality food, okay, and great service, okay? That's what you're buying into. That's what you're, for lack of a better word, that's what you're subsidizing, okay? Because there's going to be training, okay? And we're going to create the culture that we need to create in our club. This community has suffered long enough with the Ferris wheel of proprietors coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. So we control the staffing, the training, the food standards. Those are all pros. Those are all pros. I've done this for 25 years. The club selects the entertainment. And guess what? In the budget, we'll have money for entertainment. I mean, for those of you that were here during the portion of the summer, you know, on Friday nights, we had 80, 90 people coming up to the grill room. We had live entertainment. Everybody was laughing, talking, having a wonderful time, and it was all of you enjoying. I think our fish fry was $12.95. Friday night fish fry for $12.95. That's attractive. Members loved it, and they were ordering it. It was great. But see, what happens is, in the summertime, the costs go down, okay, on food product, okay? Because, I'll give you an example. They're dying for you to buy grouper, okay? But, no, you know, where in season, the chef is calling, all the chefs in the club market are, yeah, I need 120 pounds of grouper. I need 120. So the demand goes up. Obviously, we know that theory. Prices go up per pound. In the summer, they drop. Well, in a club, we pass those on to you, right? A proprietor will not do that, okay? He's got you thinking that grouper is $18.95, that's it. He's not dropping in the summer. From a club perspective, we do. That's the benefit of members. Club managed dress code, another problem solved. We can handle that. That's easy. You all know. You know, I have a membership that acts as my security guards, okay? And I have no problem with that. That's good stuff. And then obviously no parking problems on that. And that's just a few pros of why you should be considering a private restaurant managed by the club. Thank you, Jamshed.
I'll go to the cons of the private restaurant, which is the next column. A private restaurant managed by the club. Club will bear all expenses. Operating a private restaurant, the club will bear all operating expenses. Staffing costs, employee training costs, uniform and linen costs, license and permit costs, food losses from spoilage and waste, drink over pour losses, insurance costs, utility costs, cleaning costs, and maintenance and repair costs, to mention a few. Non-profitable operation. Most clubs that operate a private restaurant, I should say all clubs, are non-profitable and operate at a loss because the menu prices are not able to cover the operating costs.
Excuse me, Jamshed. You can follow this. We have a printout of private restaurant managed by club, so you can follow along with what's being said.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Found it? Did you find it?
No,
Okay. It says
It says
private restaurant managed by the club.
It's on that.
this one or the other one?
Oh, it's that one, and it's a couple pages in.
The other one.
Yeah.
3 pages.
It's the other one.
No, the one on the top.
The one that has the resume.
Private restaurant managed by the club is the header.
You know the handout where it says the education leadership?
There you go.
Yeah.
Got it?
Sorry.
That's
It's in the
okay.
other packet, Pete. It's in the other packet, third page in. Yeah.
Maybe you could help her.
Yep, she's missing a page.
I'm missing the page.
Oh,
Hers
yeah.
isn't a completed one.
it's in this one.
Okay,
There.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, now that we're all on the same wavelength.
Okay, I'll go start again. Club will bear all expenses. Operating a private restaurant, the club will bear all operating expenses. Staffing costs, employee training costs, uniform and linen costs, license and permit costs, food losses from spoilage and waste, drink over pour losses, insurance costs, utility costs, cleaning costs, and maintenance and repair costs, to mention just a few. Non-profitable operation. Most clubs that operate a private restaurant, and I should say all clubs, are not profitable and operate at a loss because the menu prices are not able to cover the operating costs. Member required annual minimum spending. To operate a private restaurant, the club will require an annual food minimum in the amount of $400 for each member. initially to help defray the cost of running the restaurant. Once imposed, this annual food minimum can continue to increase. Losses paid by member assessment. To cover the losses for the club from operating a private restaurant, members will be assessed a subsidy above the annual food minimum of $400 to cover the operating losses. Initially, it has been suggested that this subsidy will be $275. Club incurs all employee costs. For the club to operate a private restaurant, they will incur the increased costs for owning the restaurant employees and the administration of the payroll and benefits, training, uniforms, and supervision. Club has hire and fire responsibilities. The club will assume the cost of and responsibility for hiring all of the restaurant personnel, running employment ads, interviewing for prospective employees, staff training, and dealing with any disciplinary issues, including discharge if necessary. Club owns liquor permit and liabilities. The club will bear the responsibility and cost for obtaining all liquor licenses and permits in their name and any required insurance coverage. All liabilities that arise from liquor abuse will be the responsibility of the club. Club bears costs for entertainment. The club will bear the costs associated with finding and providing entertainment. Club pays for all liability insurance. The club pays the cost for all required insurance coverage for operating a restaurant in the club facilities. Club owns problems maintaining chefs. The club will incur the cost and have the responsibility for obtaining and maintaining quality chefs and kitchen staff. They will have to oversee the interviewing process for potential candidates. Given chefs and culinary staff are a high turnover profession, the club will have the responsibility for setting adequate salaries and benefits to entice quality candidates. Club responsible for staff training. The club will incur the costs and be responsible for all the training required for out-front or restaurant staff for proper etiquette, serving techniques, proper appearance, and member relationship. Club has no rental income. The club having a private restaurant managed by the club eliminates the possibility of a revenue stream for leasing the facility. Social fees for renters. The club having a private restaurant would require the club to absorb the cost for setting up and administering a system for collecting and managing fees for the renters to allow them to use the restaurant. The initial fee has been suggested as $50 a month. This fee could be a deterrent for renters. GM function diluted. Managing a restaurant is a full-time job. If the general manager was to run the club restaurant as well as manage the other functions of the club, many of the other functions would not receive the attention that they deserve. This would dilute the quality of service.
Alrighty, so now we'll open it all up to questions, if you have any.
Where's the POS system built into here for the responsibility of the operator or the club? Is there an acquisition of a POS system that's going to run the tickets and run the kitchen?
A point of sale, you mean?
Yeah.
That would be operated and paid for by the club.
By the club. And if it was a licensed operator, it would still be put in by the club as an expense to the
Correct.
club? Or
No,
would
not
that be the
necessarily.
club, would that be the operator's responsibility?
I believe the club has already spent some money on acquiring a POS system.
Yes, so the way that it's...
But 1 second.
Okay.
Now, the club can keep it in case it goes private later on. But if the independent proprietor operates it, he will use his own system. He could use the club system, but
Yeah, but the club system always seemed to have problems. There was always a delay in getting checks out. They had printer problems. They had, mishaps with the account numbers, and so the system that was there is really not a viable POS system.
Correct.
If it's an old system, or if it was a Mickey Mouse system, or piggybacked with something else, but it wasn't effective.
Yeah, it was an old system, there's no doubt about it. A brand new accounting software system is going in as we get ready to open up. The proprietor has to use our system, because if he does not use our system, then you can't do member charges. Okay? So what we're going to be doing is you're going to be issued a ID card. And you hand that to the server. Server swipes it, pulls up your account. Okay? And that's what you'll charge on. That'll be the same thing that gets you into the fitness and wellness center. You'll swipe the mag on the door to give you access into the facility. Okay? So that's the system that will be going into place. A tremendous amount of previous errors were basically the training. So they get the wrong member number, okay, on a consistent basis. So now you just be asked to provide your card. They'll swipe it into the system, and boom, that will go a long way. And it's completely upgraded all throughout.
And what if you forgot your card when you're at the club?
Then they'll have to manually input. I mean, it'll be one of those things of, getting members used to that, to bring that up when you're coming up to the club and have that part of your, lack of a better word, your arsenal.
Mm-hmm. And all of the new restaurant equipment that's being put into the kitchen as part of the renovation, that's all going to be available to the operator. And if they want additional equipment or supplies, they're going to provide it themselves, or is the club going to be responsible for providing that above and beyond the lease payments from the...
Well, historically, the club has always paid for the new equipment. The club has always paid for the repairs and maintenance on the equipment, because the equipment is owned by the club. So would we be turning over everything to a proprietor and saying, okay, here's our china, here's our glass, here's our silver, here's our tables, here's everything, okay? You get to use it all, proprietor, okay? And when plates were getting low, it was typically the club going ahead and replenishing plates, replenishing silverware, and doing all of that. Now, majority of that reason is, so for example, when Mr. Sorrow came in, I said, I don't want you bringing anything into this club. And my reason is that if the relationship went sour, I did not want you to be in a situation to say, oh, that's my meat slicer. Oh, that's my blender. I'm taking that, okay? So I stopped that, because then basically all he did was walk out with his knife set. Boom. Everything else was the club's, okay?
But that could all be negotiated in the contract. If
Exactly.
an operator comes in and they want to add additional equipment and supplies, then that becomes the property of the club because we're insuring it. They're just the lease. They're making the lease payment. So anything they bring in order to effectively run that kitchen and that dining room should be at their expense above and beyond what we've already provided, and you negotiate that in the contract, and they don't get to take it out.
I'm all for that. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying historically that was the scenario.
Or we could buy the equipment and lease it to him. So he pays the rental. Say he wants a new slicer, and slicer costs $1,000. He has to pay us a rent for using that slicer. It still belongs to us. Yes.
I have a question. In the surrounding golfing communities, is there a restaurant that uses a proprietor relationship which you're advocating?
I don't know. Okay?
No. Every club is managed in-house by its own staff, run and operated by the food and beverage manager and reports to a general manager. So no, there was the last one. I think we got out when Bill Sarlo pulled out. The last one was, I think, Quail Village, and they just went in-house.
So there was an assessment done of the clubs in relationship to this question, a comparison a couple years back about the different clubs that had the in-house service, and when they were looking at bringing in another proprietor or taking it in-house a few years ago. And they had done this analysis of the clubs, which ones had it in-house, what their estimated costs were, what their revenues were, what their losses was. Do you remember that?
Sure.
I don't know if it was during your tenure or if it was the previous manager.
Well, there is a annual report that comes out. It's called the Beekman Survey, and it surveys approximately 25 clubs in the Collier County marketplace, and it gives you all the averages and mediums and highs. It goes through from menu prices to drink prices to server rates, cook rate. I mean, it's very, very inclusive. But none of those clubs have any outside proprietor. They're all bundled communities that provide their own food and beverage service to its members.
Right, and it just focuses on the food and beverage structure.
That particular portion
It
of
does
it.
not focus on what the fees are for the members and how those fees have escalated over the time that the membership has either increased or decreased, revenue increased or decreased, so it was had to be offset. That report doesn't include that. It only
No.
includes the operational side.
It includes the operations for that fiscal year.
Right. It would be helpful probably for the majority of the membership to see something like that in a comparison, especially in the forum of a town hall meeting so that they could vote on it. Because what's probably gonna happen is people are gonna get emotionally involved in making this decision, and it's really a very practical business decision. It's either a yes or a no, because either the members are gonna bear the cost or the operator is going to bear the cost. The members are going to have to sacrifice if there's a proprietor, or the budget and the fees are going to have to be sacrificed or increased or bear the brunt of the expense if it's run in-house. But nothing here outlines any of that. So when it goes to vote, it's going to be whatever camp a group of people are in, and that's the way they're going to vote. It may or may not be the best practical decision. I think more information on that aspect should be provided before a vote is taken versus this kind of stuff. Anybody with common sense can tell you that this is just details that don't really impact what the ultimate outcome of costs are going to be going forward. And that's the biggest disadvantage here.
If you send us an email, which is in the back of one of the handouts, I'd be glad to share with you whatever information I have, including the Beekman report.
So, I mean, I can tell you what the operating philosophy would be for Royalwood if we were in-house, okay? So, as I mentioned, you know, many clubs do multiple events. They budget a very high food cost, and they love to do seafood buffets with lobster, shrimp, you know, stone crabs, oysters on the half shell, and they sell it for $32.95, and they're thrilled because they sell out the event. Well, at $32.95, of course you're going to sell it out. That's great. But members understand that $32.95 doesn't really cover the cost of the event, okay, because they're subsidizing it. They agree to in their annual dues, okay? And that is some of the operating philosophy in long-established clubs in the marketplace.
You try to offset it with your alcohol.
You know.
Because you have a higher profit margin on the alcohol.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So, am I going to do that here at Royalwood? No, I'm not going to be doing that. You know, that's not the right approach, and you're not looking for that. You know, many clubs do Sunday brunch, for example. Very, very reasonable, good cost. There is carving stations, omelet stations. There's 5 chefs out in the dining room and in the whole 9 yards. But guess what? At the end of the day, it is being subsidized within the food and beverage budget. And am I going to get you into a Sunday brunch for, you know, $26.95? We're not looking for that, okay? On a consistent Sunday basis? What I'm going to do would be say, you know what, I'm going to open up the grill room at 10 a.m., and I'm going to have a small breakfast menu on there. So if you want to come in and get an omelet and a cup of coffee and rye toast, or fresh fruit or something like that, and read the paper, or do it out on your gorgeous new indoor-outdoor patio on a Sunday, that's what I'm going to do. I don't need 5 chefs out in the dining room doing omelets and carving this and carving that. So when I talk about doing a fiscal conservative manner, that's how you would operate your club, you know, on that aspect. You know, New Year's Eve, you realize on New Year's Eve, entertainment can be as high as $5,000, okay? You can't build that into a ticket price. You can't build that into a ticket price. my Royalwood members are not looking for $75 a head New Year's Eve functions. You're not. What you're looking for is a place to go for dinner, okay, for New Year's Eve. You've all done the black tie and all that type of stuff. That's not today's marketplace. So that's the type of decision-making and the culture that would be created by us as a proprietor. Now, in the general marketplace, $75 a head for New Year's Eve is a steal in Collier County, okay? A steal. So you could expect a proprietor's going to want to go after that marketplace, okay? Which means you're shut out of the club on New Year's Eve. I mean, those are types of things to consider. So that would be our operating philosophy. I can't speak to an operating philosophy of a proprietor to come in, but if you take a look at all the expenses that a proprietor is going to absorb, like I said, he's going to have to keep that place busy, okay? Real busy. I don't know if that answered, but
he's going to have those marketing expenses. He's going to incur those costs. He's going to have the deficit if he doesn't meet his numbers. It's his responsibility. When it's our responsibility and we have to manage it, we have to add the additional staff. We have to train those staff. We have to manage those people. We have to bear the brunt of all those expenses. Food costs are constantly rising, as everybody knows. It fluctuates based on commodities. So now what you have is this set number that you think our food and beverage minimum and deficit would be per member. But I can tell you, I've lived in the finest country club in Nevada, competing against the top entertainment capital of the world with hotels and restaurants. And our food and beverage minimum when we opened our club in 1984 was $300, and our dues were $600 a month. When I handed back my membership 30 years later, we were paying $2,200 a month for our club, and we were paying a $1,250 minimum, and the club went bankrupt because we remodeled it and couldn't generate enough income to pay for the remodel.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a situation where we can't be everything here at Royalwood, but we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we bury ourselves either, which is going to cost us the value of our property, as well as give us a bad name and reputation competing against the most nicest and exclusive clubs in Naples and the best restaurants in Naples. So that's where I think there's a big
sure.
conflict.
Well, I will make a comment on that. There can only be one thing a proprietor does here at Royalwood, and that's make profits. Because if he's not making profits,
There's gonna be
he's out of it.
That's exactly
And
exactly.
we're right back at where we've been, back on the Ferris wheel. Okay, does the club take it over now or whatever? That's the risk, okay?
My thing is, I think it'd be great to have our own restaurant, be in charge of it, make our own decisions, all of that. That sounds wonderful. The only thing that you cannot control is the cost. And those are going to keep going up and up and up. And that's the part that scares me.
But, I mean, and that's true. I mean, you have to remember that you need to have a well-managed operation, okay? I remember the past two vendors didn't do monthly inventory. They didn't do monthly inventory of their food, liquor, beer, or wine, and I'm like, how do you know what you did this month? How did you know that 20 pounds of ground beef didn't walk out your back door? I was just stunned. I mean, I took inventory management classes as a freshman in the fall. That's how critical, that is. But what happens is with clubs, it's really managing toward. You have good months and bad months. There's no doubt about that. My goal is that at the end of the year, I've hit my numbers, okay, in all my categories. So that's what we shoot for. But like I said, the costs go up, so you adjust, okay. You make adjustments, on that as well. The problem is if costs are going up for me, then they're going up for the proprietor as well, okay. And his profit margin, if he can generate a profit, is going down and down and down and down and down. And that's the challenge, okay? There's nothing worse out there one of the reasons why we immediately reopened after Bill Sorrow pulled is because we didn't want the word on the street was that Royalwood's closed. Okay, Royalwood's closed. Did you hear that? Okay, that would have been a very, very bad rep. Okay, and that's one reason why we kicked into gear within 10 days to, kind of keep things going. So just to give you some background on that.
Excuse me, you had a question, Peter?
Yeah, getting back to not only the proprietor, but also, for Royalwood, when we're in operation, say it went proprietor, what would the schedule be for the week, for the hours?
Yeah.
And would it remain constant throughout the year like a restaurant should? Or would it differ in the off-season?
It'll have to be negotiated with the proprietor. Hopefully it'll be open 7 days a week for 365 days of the year. But I have made out a little scenario on how we can get an agreement with the proprietor. And if you're interested, I'll send it to you.
That was kind of my question. In years past, we've made reservations to come up. We always want to go to the clubhouse. I'd get a call that afternoon. They didn't have enough people, so it was closed. It was a horrible embarrassment. If we are private, if we own it, do you plan on having it open no matter what?
If the club hours of operation for dining are posted, which obviously they would be, we're going to be open per that schedule. Yeah, per that schedule.
And then on a second note, the money. Why go with $400 and then an assessment of $275? Why wouldn't we just begin with $675 and everybody would be happy?
It's a good question. Let me explain that. So the $400 is a minimum. You're not being billed for that. That's a declining balance that would be on your statement.
Right.
Okay? So you're not being billed for that. So as you come in for food and beverage, takeout, and I'd like to do delivery as well for takeout. Okay? So as you come in for trivia and all the events and dining and all that type of stuff, we take that monthly food and beverage charge and we decline it, minus $400. The following month, minus $287. So that there'll be a point where your minimum has been, quote unquote, satisfied. Okay? You're done. You're good to go. So the $275 is the additional amount of dues subsidy that we believe will adequately fund restaurant operations, our hours of operation, our training, and all that type of stuff. Okay? So it's not $675. It's there.
So you're just adding it onto your card as you would at Dunkin' Donuts.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Does this include liquor?
Yes.
Why?
It does.
Because we're a bundled community, and I had a guy at one of the town hall meetings says, "Well, I come in for beer.
Yeah.
Can I spend the whole
Yeah.
$400 drinking beer?" Well, my beer cost is 22%. My food cost is 42%. That's actually a moneymaker. So, and let me tell you, typically, alcohol, especially up at clubs up north, this is where this all kind of was born from. Up north doesn't necessarily have bundled club communities like we have here in the Florida marketplace. So, example, the club that my parents belonged to, Niagara Falls Country Club, that club was 22 miles from our house. Well, obviously, you're not included. The club had a minimum. Obviously, the club's not going to include that because you're getting in your car and you're driving 22 miles home. And I will tell you what, in a Royalwood community, and I've been here now 3 years. You're coming in, you're having 2 glasses of wine, and you're good to go.
Right.
I don't have to do last call in the lounge to get Royalwood members to go home. So it's a convenient means, for us to do it because you're not going anywhere. You're driving down the street. Yes.
Generic question, but are there any clubs with a smaller population than Royalwood in the area? Our population seems to be the smallest. We're trying to bargain with buying with all the large clubs.
I don't think they're bundled. Royal Palm has got 350, but they're not bundled.
They're not bundled.
And it's funny because there's a lot of clubs that have 799 units, and that was driven by Collier County Land Code, because if you went to 801 units, then this whole new procedure kicked in. And I don't know necessarily what that was, but you'd be, let's see, Vasari is 799, Stonebridge is 799, Royalwood is 799. It's this quirky thing from, from years ago, believe it or not, why that is the case. That answered your question.
During the off-season, if we go private, would the club be open to reciprocals?
Of course.
Private functions to raise revenue during the off-season?
Correct. Correct. I'll aggressively go after private functions because they're just good money makers.
So are you going to also manage the sales and marketing of driving that additional revenue stream along with your other duties, or are you going to have a restaurant manager?
Correct.
A chef, a sales and marketing person that goes out and gets these special events and fills the space up on the downtime of when we don't have events even in season, weddings and whatever. Like most private clubs, you have to be sponsored to be able to have an event there. And it's usually at a premium cost. But if a member doesn't bring you in, but then you have 800 members that are selling the club function space for you.
Correct.
So it's a little bit of a different scenario. Are you going to also add that income or that expense onto the cost of the budget for running the club private? And is that included in the $275 that would be part of the assessment?
I wouldn't anticipate hiring some full-time sales and marketing person by any stretch of the imagination. So what clubs typically do is they post onto a wedding website, okay? So if you're looking for wedding reception venues, then you go on there, you're a subscriber for it, you have all your pictures of your club, sample menus, and all that type of stuff. And then twice a year, there is a wedding reception bridal thing up at, I think it's at, was it Germain Arena? Is that what it's still called now?
Yes. That's
So,
typical in every market.
So
I publish wedding guides. So
yeah. So that would be the main way that we would do that, all the way through. But I wouldn't necessarily. So what they would do is they would come into the club, and then of course book an appointment with us, and then they'd sit down with our food and beverage manager and do all of that. But I wouldn't hire
But
somebody.
the club would be strictly private, except for these special events that the club would then be selling, open seating space outside of the membership.
Correct.
So there would be no open table where people could come in from the outside and fill up our space because we have seating available and there are open
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mention that because somebody in yesterday's town hall meeting said, well, why don't we just open up to the public and after season ends, so say May 15th was, kind of our day that says, okay, we're going to be open to the public. My position would be is, I have no issue with that concept. Obviously, that's one of the things that we get to control. I wouldn't open up initially more evenings because now I'm out trying to push for public, okay? Unless it was overwhelming success, but you know how open, every restaurant in town is now doing, 2 for this and 2 for that and, all of that. So would I allow them to come on in? Last summer we were open Tuesdays and Friday nights, okay? So, maybe what we do is, and karaoke was very popular, and open that up that night because, what we did is we made sure that they had to spend a minimum, okay? Anybody from out in the public, there was a $10 minimum, okay, for you to come on in. And people would say, well, why are you doing that? This is public. And I go, who do you think is paying for the karaoke person? Okay? We're paying for the karaoke person. So you got to make a contribution to it. Okay? So, but that's all part of the things that we would control, which is nice.
So, if you're during the summer you open membership up in the club for golf,
The
Do they
receptacles.
carry a minimum as well?
No.
Well, why not? Don't we want them eating?
Well, we do, but remember, they're reciprocal members.
Oh, I thought there was a membership.
No, she's talking about the summer membership.
No, there's been no, you have to take a minimum, okay?
No, but there could be something, a revenue.
Well, it
opportunity.
could be, it could be. So we get about 50 summer members, okay? They spend approximately about $125,000 in revenue we generate from the summer members. And we're at that stretch point where our fee is, I think, $700, and we're kind of right there. We can't necessarily increase that much more before we start losing our summer members. But I can guarantee you that with a reopened clubhouse and the beauty of that clubhouse, certainly we'll have summer members that will be spending more time coming in for lunch. We also are in a position where now we can pair the specials, so it's which we haven't necessarily been able to do because we always had a vendor. So it's like, okay, cart fee, and then you have a lunch, and you get a cold beer, and here's your package price.
Right.
Those are very successful in clubs.
Yep.
Okay, and that generates that type of traffic. So in the event that we're running it, we would go ahead and do that package, do that type of package deal.
So we would be open reciprocal season. They go to all the reciprocals
Correct.
around town.
Oh yeah, reciprocals are great.
I mean, the lunch is included, the wives go.
Correct.
I mean, it's a terrific take.
Correct.
It's a good moneymaker.
Correct. And I would expect that we would increase our reciprocal dining in the evening as well because the club has been renovated, because we have the indoor-outdoor patio. We'll have 2 fire pits on each end of the outdoor patio with casual lounge furniture. So if you just want to come on up and have a glass of wine and kind of listen to music, you can sit out there by the fire pit. I mean, you'll see that as you're driving down Royalwood Boulevard, okay? You'll see those 2 fire pits, and you'll be going, why aren't we turning our blinker on?
Exactly.
Barbara?
The committee has come up with the budget for how the assessment would work for the privatization of the club with the minimum and the 275 shortfall. What have we done to analyze what the potential marketplace is for independent operators who can fit the requirements of the needs of our club as a third-party strategic partner, and at what price? Has that analysis been done, and have those searches been conducted to have something to compare it to? It doesn't do us much good to vote if we all voted for a private operator and we can't find a private operator, then where are we? If we go private and we can't manage that situation, now we've got to go out and find a private operator, and we may even have a bigger shortfall because we're going to have to subsidize the private operator like we did in the past, and they don't pay the rent. So what have we done on that side of the analysis to compare to the budget on the side of privatization?
We haven't done anything special to survey the market because we don't know where we're going to stand. If we go public, we still have 6 months before the restaurant opens. So,
but do we have a contingency if we cannot find the right operator to meet our demands and make them a profitable business for themselves? What's going to happen in that 6-month period, and we open our doors and we are fumbling to either run it ourselves until we find somebody?
it's a business decision that you have to make.
6 months is not a long time.
We have talked to a few restaurant owners, and they've shown interest. That's all
So
we can say.
existing restaurant operators in this market is who the committee is talking to determine whether or not
I
they
don't know
would
if the
like to
committee
open
is
a
talking to. I'm
secondary
saying I
location.
personally have talked to.
Yeah,
The questions you're asking are being, or should have been being addressed by the restaurant committee, which we're not part of. Okay.
We are not part
So
of it.
that's questions that would have to be asked to the restaurant committee, who then answers to the board.
So why hasn't the restaurant committee been involved in the town hall meetings to address these kinds of questions so that we can make educated decisions about
Good question.
what this vote needs to be?
so
Very good question.
I can answer that. The
Otherwise,
restaurant,
we're in the same problem,
The-
fight over this, that, and the other thing.
the restaurant committee recommended to the board to take operations in-house after the renovation. And the board adopted that, their recommendation. So the restaurant committee, because of that recommendation, they're not about to go on out and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and let's see if we can search for a proprietor that can take over operations, because they already did their field work, and they believe it's the long-term best interest of this community to finally get off the Ferris wheel and manage the operations ourselves and control our own destiny. So they're not, and I'm not being asked, Kyle, go start knocking on doors and see if you can go find some proprietor, because obviously you know my feelings as your general manager on what direction the club should go in. So that has not been charged to go on out and try and ring doorbells and try and find a proprietor that can do that. In my opinion, the biggest challenge is are you going to find a proprietor that has any club experience? I mean, it's a whole different story. I mean, you all saw how successful the East Trail operation was, and then whew, down it went. If the vote goes for proprietor, and there's nobody suitable that can meet the terms, okay? Because there's talk right now of trying to see if all these expenses can be covered and get $5,000 a month in rent, okay? For a physical location that's hidden behind Rattlesnake Hammock Road, okay? Then there is no doubt the club would reserve the right to go ahead and say, we're taking it in-house. We can't find anybody. And we're not about to marginalize the restaurant operations and having somebody just kind of squeak in with minimal amount of cash flow and off the bat needs all types of subsidy from the club. I mean, that business model just doesn't work.
No,
Okay.
it's been proven. We've
Correct.
already had that.
Correct.
Over and over again.
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so also, if a proprietor comes in the past, we've always subsidized them.
That's correct.
So the rent is, we're not getting any rent, are we?
That's right.
Are we getting any rent when
No.
they come in?
Well, I don't think we've always subsidized them. We've only subsidized the last 4.
We subsidized the original guy, the original guy from the 1980s.
Yeah.
We subsidized in the very, very beginning,
That's
the
right.
operator that was there for 15, 16 years.
Yep.
He never paid the dime of it.
Yeah. never
That's
did.
right.
From when we first built the club.
He didn't
Right.
pay rent?
No,
you
he
think?
did not pay rent.
No, I understand that, but we didn't add capital to his operation, which we did in the last 4 operators. Okay, we committed operating capital to the operators over the last 4 operators.
And
We
we're
started initially with the initial one at 30,000, and at the last, well, I'm not sure about Bill, but the third one, we were up to $90,000 input, so.
But you're assuming now that you can get rent and not subsidized?
Correct.
Why would it be different?
Because the process of selection would be different.
Why would it be different?
The process of selection would be different.
It's a long story, you don't want to get into
What?
that
Doesn't
here.
make any sense.
No, it doesn't
Never
make
been able
sense.
to do it before.
Most of the last 4 operators that we acquired,
They're bad.
we acquired them under pressure, okay, because of circumstances and situations that occurred.
I agree with you, but we're under pressure.
Yeah.
We are 6 months out from opening.
But we
That-
didn't
are
have
under
6
pressure.
days in those situations, most of them. We have 6 months now to look out for
Didn't work
professional
for 2 different owners.
organizations that deal in these types of situations.
Well, don't you think, as we sitting here, you should have some of those type of proposals to give us, so we know that we're not gonna come back to 6 weeks?
Coley, I think you're right, but that's the responsibility of the restaurant committee, and I don't think they did much research
So
in
where are
terms
they?
of the public
In our town.
approach.
Okay.
They only concentrated on the private approach.
Okay.
Yeah. The restaurant committee is, including myself, nothing against my partners here, but the restaurant committee is not in a position to be defending the concept of going to an independent proprietor.
Why? They represent the membership. They're
Because
a,
they've
they're
already
a
decided that we
committee,
should do it ourselves.
That's correct.
they're a committee that represents the membership that's been appointed by the board. And shouldn't they be looking at all options in the best interest of the general membership and the benefits of the club?
You're
They
right.
did that already.
In my
and that's
opinion,
what
they
did.
already-
They should have.
Yeah.
They already believe that the
Yes,
long-term interest of all members is to take it in-house
correct.
because it has not worked. And it's never worked.
Then why are we voting?
Because it was a position of giving you all the choice, okay? Because remember, the board made the decision, and I worked with Will on this, and we came up and said, you know what? Let's let the members decide what they want to do, okay? So we have now put together our scenario, okay, to outline to you what would be that scenario. And that's where we are today, okay? But I will tell you that if a proprietor cannot be found that agrees to these terms, okay, and they're very, very hefty terms, okay, which is, I mean, if we could find this scenario, okay, I would turn around and say, members, you should take it. You kidding me? $60,000 a year in rent and you pay no bills? Holy gosh. Yeah. Even in my conscience, I'd have to say, go ahead and take it, okay?
Thank you, guys.
But you gotta-
I agree with you.
You know, I mean, that's a tough one. But I'll tell you what, you better keep looking for that rainbow on the end of it, because that's what it's going to be, okay?
Yes, sir.
If it were just like the old days, where we subsidized and we didn't charge any rent, right off the top of your heads, how do the two compare? If we found an outside vendor just like the ones we had, but was able to run a restaurant efficiently,
That's
One of
about
those,
it.
I mean,
That's a diamond.
with the cost, is the cost that much different?
Let's put it this way. We would not accept a outside proprietor like Bill Soros. We would have somebody more substantial with more experience
Right.
and somebody who
Yeah,
could
but
put
you
up
don't
a...
know if they exist
It
in
wasn't
this
just
market.
Bill, it was
Sorry?
everybody.
You don't know if they exist in this market.
They
That's the
do.
problem, and if we go to vote, and then we have this disruption of the vote like we did on the first round of renovations that didn't get passed because of all the confusion about what were the numbers, okay, which is probably what's gonna happen here. We're gonna be at a stalemate, and we're gonna be under pressure to do something again because we're only 6 months out.
So let me chime in here real quick, and we have to kind of wrap things up. The biggest difference is by an independent proprietor is that many of them do not provide benefits whatsoever, okay? So
to the staff.
to the staff. So the staff don't get paid vacations, staff don't get medical benefits, they get nothing, okay? So that's why they're coming and going. They're in and out. There's nothing for them to stay for. A proprietor probably is not going to be hiring a chef, he's going to be hiring line cooks, okay? Because they know something about the business, okay? But the owner has got to be the manager and the operator. And all he can afford is line cooks, okay? Because he's got to keep his payroll cost low, because that goes right into his pocket. Benefits is what gets longevity in country clubs. You know, you all know, same servers every year. Oh my gosh.
50% of the check, it goes into the pool, and they get their
Right.
insurance, and they
Okay.
get their...
Yeah, so
vacation.
that's one of the beautiful things is you coming back every year, or our year-round residents, okay, to be greeted at the door. They know your favorite table, they know your favorite drink, they know exactly what you want to get on the menu to eat, they know you came up for the special. That's the beauty of having a club, okay? And a proprietor, it's difficult for them to compete with that, but that's why there's always in and out the door on a pub, because there's no reason to stay whatsoever, because you're not sitting there waiting for your medical benefits to kick in, your 401k program. That is what attracts staff to stay in the club business for so long, okay? And they enjoy it. And as you very well know, long-established clubs with the same staff, they become part of family when it really boils down to it. And that's what's a beautiful environment about a club. You ready?
We've just
Ready.
about done. Any more questions?
Any
All
questions
righty.
on the minimum? Everybody understand the minimum?
Will the restaurant committee be at the master board able to answer any questions that,
I would hope so. They report at each meeting.
okay.
Peter, you
I mean, they can answer questions on being privately run,
Yeah,
you know, on that,
As
so.
far as the minimum, $400, it's not an expense, it's you're getting something for your
for
money.
far, right.
Right.
You're getting, it's not like a subsidy
You're
of
eating.
some sort, right?
Correct.
Drinking,
You're
yeah.
consuming it.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what
yes.
you're doing.
Yeah,
When
you're
you get-
consuming
you
it.
get- make
It doesn't
ends meet,
reduce
It's gonna go to
costs.
600, and then it's
Okay.
gonna go to 750.
Doesn't reduce
and then
costs.
it's
What
gonna
if
go
no-
to 800.
what if nobody
It
goes
has to
up
be
there and uses that
subsidized somehow
400?
or another.
Then you're gonna get billed at the end of the year
This
for
is not
400.
a year-round
But
one.
you still have to pay it.
And you're not
Everybody
gonna make it.
has to pay it.
No,
Yeah,
you're not
so-
paying
so,
it.
yes,
You're
it's coming,
consuming it.
consuming.
Right, but if you don't use it, you're
Everybody's
paying
getting
it.
That's
billed,
correct.
correct.
And I know Royal would,
They'll use it.
okay?
I'll use it.
Okay,
All righty, we
Thank-
really appreciate you all coming. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for taking the time
Thank
to
you.
have the meetings.
how about that?
Yeah.
The smallest group.